Good morning and welcome to Prairie Alliance Church. And wherever in the world you're watching us from, and if it's your first time or if it's your 1000th time, wonder how many of you have actually been at a church service 1,000 times. That's an interesting question, I think, actually. Anyway, besides that, wherever you are, we just want to welcome you here. We are so glad you've chosen to join us here this morning so that we can hear more about God's love for us and how we can take that out into our world and impact the people around us. My name is Teresa Stanley, and I am the youth pastor here at the Portage campus. And I just want to give a shout out to all the students everywhere, because I know here in our school, it's been a pretty big week. It's the end of school year for everybody. For our grads, it's kind of the closing of this big chapter of their life. And you guys did it all in a pandemic. So we are so proud of you and just invite you to celebrate this summer and enjoy. And don't think about September. Well, think about it a little bit, but not too much. But enjoy this summer. And I also want to invite you back after, I guess not back, to continue watching after the service as we do our activation. Hannah and I will be there. We'll be talking a little bit about the sermon, and we'll be talking about how you can actually take that practically into your week so that you can go from beyond here on Sunday morning to taking it to change the world around you. And now we're going to watch a multi-site minute where Pastor Kevin is going to introduce us to some of the people part of our PAC family in Dryden. Take a look at this.
Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to this multi-site minute. This is a chance for us to get to know our growing family and to catch a vision for the exciting things that PAC is getting involved in towns around Manitoba and northwestern Ontario. And so today, we've got Matt and Leanne Taylor with us from Dryden, Ontario. Hey, guys.
Hey, how's it going, mate?
Matt and Leanne are part of the core team at Timbers Church there in Dryden. Hey, maybe you guys could start, just tell us a little bit about yourselves.
Well, probably tell I wasn't born here. Moved to Canada in 95, married this wonderful lady. We met in YWAM, and then since 95, we've been here back in Canada. Leanne as well. She's been living in Australia. She'd lived in Australia for quite some time as well. Been in Dryden for about 25 years. I'm a diesel mechanic by trade. Work on trucks, the best truck in the world, Peterbilt, I suppose, if you want to say that. But raised a family of 3 children, 2 girls, Emma and Abby and Ben. And Leanne, well, what's your story?
I went to Youth with a Mission when I was 17, and I was in Australia. So I was there for 7 years and had some immigration issues and had to come home. And so Matt didn't have his act together, so I came home alone.
Yeah, typical man.
So he followed me here to Canada a year later, and then we've been here in Canada ever since. And so it's been good. But we have 3 kids. One is actually still in Australia. The other was in Australia and came home during the pandemic, both in school. And we have our son graduated last year, and he's waiting to get himself back to Australia too.
Hey, so you guys were first introduced to PAC, I think, back in the fall. There was a time when Nathan and Chris were driving through Dryden, coming home from Thunder Bay. And Ron Gertson from the district office happened to be in Dryden, found out that Nate and Chris were going by. Hey, can you stop by and meet these people? That ended up being a pretty important get-together, I think. Tell us a little bit about that time.
Well, Ron he checks in with us regularly. He's our district guy. And we had just kind of been through a very difficult season relationally within Timbers, and there's just was a very difficult, tender time, and feeling we're not quite sure where we are, what's left, And when Ron said, did you want to meet these folks? Sure, And up until now, I guess, Timbers is kind of the very edge of the district.
Yeah, we're the back fence.
We're the end of the trade route. And so not many people, used to be when people would travel through within the district to Thunder Bay, to Redwood, we were kind of all on trade route. But then when Redwood changed districts, we kind of were the end of the road. And not very exciting to stop in at the time. But anyway, so we were just kind of feeling a little heavy. And so when we met with Chris and Nathan, there was just a real warmth in the room, but there was also just a sense of, I just won't even say like a sigh. I do some counseling as in private practice. And one of the things in counseling is that you can sometimes feel things. You can't put words to them, but you feel like you're holding something for somebody, something precious, something important. And for me, that's what it felt like. It felt like, oh, okay, and you caught it. Nathan and Chris, whatever it was, they caught it. It was like, oh, okay. What do I do with this? I don't know. So when Nathan says, well, what are you waiting for? And I said, you guys.
Yeah, it was actually. It was like a unanimous, you guys, right?
But it was just that sense of, thank you. And
not to be rescued. It was just
to be felt.
It was a moment where, you felt here they are, here we are, and what's God up to here? It was like a buffet. It almost felt like you turned up at a buffet, and it was like, well, can we go now? Can we eat now? But there was just a presentation of grace and peace and love that because of the circumstances we've been in actually fed us.
That's beautiful. Yeah. That's beautiful to have that kind of sense of connection, in a sense that, wow, I think God is doing something good here in the midst of all of us. That's really awesome. Hey, you guys, we have loved seeing you online through this online season, but man, we can't wait to meet you guys in person and the rest of the Dryden crew. And we're just really excited to see the ways that God is going to use PAC to bless Dryden and build his church there. So thanks for doing this with us today. So Matt, how do you say goodbye in Australia?
See you later, mate.
See you later, mate. That was pretty painful, wasn't it?
Oh, it was actually pretty good, mate. Yeah.
Right.
I just say goodbye.
Right.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Yeah, one of the great things about technology, hey, we get to see and meet people who live far away from us. So that's a pretty cool thing. And I appreciated Kevin's good try on that accent there. That was great. And now it is a side week, which is a week where we focus on our connections with each other. And so in the room where you are with the people around you, get on your feet, everybody on your feet, unless you're driving. Don't get on your feet when you're driving. That's a bad idea. But everybody else stand up and join hands with the people around you, and let's pray this side prayer together, preparing our hearts. Jesus, thank you that I am a sheep in your large flock. Thank you for new eyes to see. Those I need to forgive, those who are lonely, those who need space, those ready to give up, those who need encouragement, and those who need to know that they are welcome here. Thank you, Holy Spirit, for your love to care for these, my brothers and sisters. In your name, amen. And now worship with our band.
Clouds, kings and kingdoms will bow down, and every chain will break as broken eyes declare his praise. Who can stop the Lord Almighty? Our God is a lion, the Lion of Judah. He's roaring with power and fighting our battles, and every knee will bow before him. For our God is the Lamb that was slain for the sins of the world. His blood breaks the chains, and every knee will bow before the Lion and the Lamb. Every knee will bow before him. So open up the gates, make way before the King of Kings. God who comes to save is here to set the captives free. Who can stop the Lord Almighty? Our God is the Lion of Judah. He's roaring with power and fighting our battles, and every knee will bow before him. Our God is the Lamb that was slain for the sins of the world. His blood breaks the chains, and every knee will bow before the Lion and the Lamb. Yes, every knee will bow before him. Who can stop the Lord Almighty? Who can stop the Lord Almighty? Who can stop you, Lord Almighty? Who can stop the Lord Almighty? Oh, who can stop the Lord Almighty? Who can stop the Lord Almighty? Oh, who can stop the Lord Almighty? Oh, who can stop the Lord? Yeah! Our God is the Lion of Judah. He's roaring with power and fighting our battles, and every knee will bow before him. Our God is the Lamb that was slain for the sins of the world. His blood breaks the chains, and every knee will bow before the Lion and the Lamb. Yes, every knee will bow before him. Yeah! Every fear must fall. Jesus, you say who I am. When fear and shame drag me down to the grave, I'm safe and secure, for I am yours. Jesus, you call me your friend. Reconciled, I'm cherished and chosen. Oh, I'm never alone, for I am yours. Every fear must fall. My Father is for me. I am loved by God. Yes. Oh. Jesus, I am born again. Kingdom child and heir to your promises. Your spirit is mine. Jesus, speak just one word from you, and all fear will cease. Speak, Jesus, speak. In your love alone rests my victory. Oh, speak, Jesus, speak. Just one word from you, and all fear will cease. Oh, speak, Jesus, speak. In your love alone rests my victory. Yeah. Every fear must fall. My Father is for me. I am loved by God. Jesus is here, so all of my fear be gone. My Father is for me. I am loved by God. Jesus is here, so all of my fear be gone. My Father is for me. I am loved by God. My Father is for me. I am loved by God. When all I see is the battle, you see my victory. When all I see is the mountain, you see a mountain move. And as I walk through the shadow, your love surrounds me. There's nothing to fear now, for I am safe with you. Alright, sing it out. So when I fight on my knees with my hands lifted high. And oh God, the battle belongs to you, and every fear I lay at your feet, and I'll sing through the night. Oh God, the battle belongs to you. And if you are for me, who can be against me? For Jesus, there's nothing impossible with you. When all I see are the ashes, you see the beauty. When all I see is a cross, God, you see the empty tomb. So when I fight on my knees with my hands lifted high. Oh God, battle belongs to you. And every fear I lay at your feet, I'll sing through the night. Oh God, battle belongs to you. And almighty fortress, you go before us. Nothing can stand against the power of our God. You shine in the shadows. You win every battle. Nothing can stand against the power of our God. Oh, almighty fortress, you go before us. Nothing can stand against the power of our God. You shine in the shadows. You win every battle. Nothing can stand against the power of our God. Almighty fortress, you go before us. Nothing can stand against the power of our God. You shine in the shadows. You win every battle. Nothing can stand against the power of our God. So when I fight on my knees with my hands lifted high. Oh God, battle belongs to you. And every fear I lay at your feet. I'll sing through the night. Oh God, the battle belongs to you. Oh God, the battle belongs to you. I've searched the world, but it couldn't fill me. Man's empty praise and treasures that fade are never enough. Then you came along and put me back together. And every desire is now satisfied here in your love. Oh, there's nothing better than you. Oh, there's nothing better than you. Oh, there's nothing. Nothing is better than you. I'm not afraid to show you my weakness, my failures and flaws. Lord, you've seen them all, and you still call me friend. 'Cause the God of the mountains is the God of the valley. There's not a place your mercy and grace won't find me again. Oh, there's nothing better than you. Oh, there's nothing better than you. Lord, there's nothing. Nothing is better than you. Oh, there's nothing better than you. Oh, there's nothing better than you. Lord, there's nothing. Nothing is better than you. You turn mourning to dancing. You give beauty for ashes. You turn shame into glory. You're the only one who cares.
Hey everybody, welcome again. There's a whole lot of cute in that video, exceeding levels. We should almost have a warning on it. Those are Pastor Owen and Amanda's kids, our Dauphin campus pastors, and he was telling me about that video when little Cullen in the boots and the shorts, which is a great look, like timeless look, is pulling that suitcase of his along that Owen actually put something heavy in. I think he might have put rocks just to really get the little guy like suffering. Maybe suffering's the wrong word. Anyway, we're going from that cute intro video to a hard pivot to talking about how to help you become the kind of religious person who is magnetic and compelling. Or let me put it a different way. I want to help you this morning become the kind of religious person who is not annoying, not off-putting, not insensitive, not disturbing, not violent, and not damaging. Because we all know a religious person who's like that. And you don't have to go too far, really, to see somebody whose religion, their faith in God, has turned into something that is so annoying, that is so miserable, that is so repellent instead of compelling and magnetic. And this is really important for us personally. Well, it's important for Christians everywhere, but in the context of PAC, it's really important for us because it informs our multi-site vision, our multi-site prayer, that we are to plant churches and have campuses in rural hubs like Dauphin, Neepawa, Dryden, etc. And the reason we want to do that is because in those towns, there's often not the churches that are those magnetic, compelling ones. In fact, in some places, the church is a bit of a repellent. People have had bad experiences, and our desire is to go into those places and to maybe partner with an existing church, like in the case of Timbers, or to start something new, like in Neepawa, and have it be a compelling, magnetic atmosphere. Except if we ourselves, as individuals, are not compelling and magnetic, then it's hard to have like an organization that's compelling and magnetic that's made up of repellent people. So it's important that we figure out how to do this. Let me be really clear what we're talking about. What we're not talking about is flat-out hypocrisy. So we're not talking about the pastor who is sexually abusing somebody. That person, we just understand that they know that what they're doing falls way outside the boundaries of what is good and faithful and is in the category of evil. Now, maybe over time they have become desensitized to what they're doing and they're fooling themselves, but at some point on that spectrum, they knew darn well that what they were doing was flat out wrong and evil. We're not talking about the kind of repellent religious person who is only using religious language so that they can become more powerful, that they can have more money, and they know that that's exactly what they're doing. Maybe this person has given up faith in God a long time ago, but they're kind of stuck being a priest or a pastor, and it's just kind of a gig that they have, so they're just using religious language to feather their own nest and to get ahead. They know they're being hypocritical. We're not talking about that this morning because for most of us, that's always a danger, but when we catch that, we want to stop it. What I want to talk about, though, is much more subtle. I want to talk about the kind of religious person who does the most damage when they think they're being most faithful. I want to talk about the kind of religious person who thinks that they are being most holy and pious when they are actually doing the most damage to somebody. And that, my friends, is a real damage for all of us because it's very easy when you are a religious person, and what I mean by that is just a person of faith, somebody who believes in God, a Christian who worships Him in the name of Jesus. It is very easy to get to a place where you have a blind spot that where you think you're being holy, where you're being sincerely pursuing Jesus, you're actually hurting people, and that's what we want to avoid. Think about the scars on Canada that we have all seen unearthed here in fresh and new ways. Now, we know there was some people in those mixes that were considerably evil and that had bad intentions and that were just flat out doing things they knew that were wrong, but then there was the tacit majority that kind of thought this was an okay thing, that maybe there was some sort of faithfulness there, that this is what it meant to be a holy Christian, was to do and support this kind of thing. How do you get there? Years ago, we had some real sincere and pious people fly airplanes into skyscrapers, 100% believing they were doing the right thing. And we're like, how do you ever get there? Very easily. And some of us are already there, we just don't know it. To calibrate us with one last thought here is a quote from a theologian named G.B. Caird. In the middle of this massive book on New Testament theology, I think he's talking about the Pharisees, who we'll see here in our verses later on. He says, in all the annals of human vice, so like in all of human history, if you list all the atrocities that humans have committed against each other, no power is destructive, and then he adds this, or demonic, just kind of really making it pointed for people who don't want to be accused of being demonic. No power is as destructive or demonic as perverted sincerity. Now, the thing about sincerity is you never know, or at least you're in danger of not knowing that it is perverted. So I don't want you this morning to think of those quack Christians out there that I never want to be like, that are repellent. I want you to think, maybe I have, as a Christian, stumbled into a place where I think I'm being faithful and sincere, and it's actually perverted and messed up and not furthering the kingdom of God. Are you comfortable with that this morning? I think you are. Let's go there and see where it takes us. It takes us, first of all, to these verses in Acts where Paul finally arrives in Jerusalem. Now, Paul's got his own reconciliation project going on. Here at PAC, over the month of June and a little bit earlier, we've had these things come together, and we've got a series of videos that explains what God has done here. And actually, it's worth updating you that on the reconciliation offering that we were receiving over the last few weeks, when I checked on Wednesday, we were over $30,000, which is fantastic when you consider all the things that are different about this offering. First of all, so many of you never really what are we actually giving to? It's the idea of reconciliation and this hope that we might have access to communities and to preserve culture and be invited. And it's so nebulous. I mean, we talked early on about how these projects, there's early adopters and it's about a third of the people, but this one really required some early adopters because the contours of it were pretty blurry. Having said that, you need to know that we've been invited to Norway House already. And there's a plan for a weekend there, and they're going to take us around and actually show us some painted rocks that were painted 17,000 years ago, as near as they can tell. Somebody's putting us up in their yard, and that's where we'll do some of these recordings if it goes that far. So we're on our way. The offer has been made to purchase the plane. It's not finalized yet. But maybe one of the coolest things of all that is how the kids are so pumped up. I've got a baggie in the house. Actually, somebody dropped it off, a little Ziploc bag. It says Reconciliation Project. Looks like there's about $22 in it, which is like probably 90% of some 9-year-old's net worth, who is just so excited about what God is doing and is feeling the pain in our nation in this moment and is kind of going, what can I do? And then they have this outlet, and it's awesome to see. Paul's reconciliation project involves money as well, and obviously trying to unite groups of people that culturally have been opposed or at odds with each other for quite some time, Jews and Gentiles. He has been circulating around the ancient Near East, getting the Greek churches to raise money for the Jewish church in Jerusalem. Because he's betting that when he shows up with a chest full of gold, all the racist Jews might say, hey, these Greeks are all right. You can see how that might help when you come bearing those kind of gifts, particularly when Jerusalem is an impoverished church. So he's coming back with all these Greek guys, all these Jewish guys, a chest full of money, and he arrives there and is greeted warmly. The next day, Paul went in to meet with James, and all the elders of the Jerusalem church were there. So, big warm welcome. Then there's the meeting. After greeting them, Paul gives a detailed account of all the things God had accomplished among the Gentiles through his ministry. He's trying to convince these Jewish Christians over and over that it is a really good thing that Jesus is for the Gentiles as well. But there must be moments in there where he's like, are we there yet? Like, this just isn't sinking in. I have to keep explaining the same thing over and over again. Really? A Gentile was healed? Really? A Gentile spoke in tongues? Really? A Gentile has the Holy Spirit? Yes, yes, yes. And he's over and over the same story. But he's patient. At least here he is. Sometimes Paul doesn't seem too patient. Here he is. After hearing this, they praised God. I wonder about that. If that's really, they're like, oh, that's awesome, or if they're just kind of hustling to their plan, because here they have a plan. They say, Paul, you know, dear brother, and maybe laying it on a bit thick there, greasing him up a bit, how many thousands of Jews have also believed? And they all follow the law of Moses very seriously. So they're Jews that believe in Jesus, but they haven't left behind the Jewish traditions of circumcision and dietary laws and the temple and things like that. Now, if you've been paying attention to Acts, Paul's basically been going around in all these places where he's collecting money. He's like, that stuff isn't necessary anymore. So there's this clash of sort of this cosmopolitan, traveled Christian coming home to like the hillbilly church that hasn't changed in 50 years. And there's some tensions there. But they want to get ahead of those tensions because Paul's coming back and there's been rumors about him. But the Jewish believers here in Jerusalem have been told, Paul, that you are teaching all the Jews who live among the Gentiles to turn their backs on the law of Moses. Now, he's not saying that. He's just saying it's unnecessary. He's not saying you shouldn't do it. He's just saying you don't need to do it. So there's a bit of truth there, but not entirely. They've heard that you teach them not to circumcise their children or follow other Jewish customs. Again, he doesn't teach that directly, but he certainly is okay with this departure from a rigid conformity to Jewish law. What should we do? They will certainly hear that you've come. So Paul, this apostate, this heretic, is coming back. They're worried that he's not going to be well received. What should we do? Well, they know what they're going to do. Here's what we want you to do. We have 4 men who have completed their vow. This is a sort of in-house Jewish ritual that 4 guys are going through. Pretty visible, pretty devout. You don't do this thing unless you're a devout Jew. 4 guys are doing this. Paul, if you could just go with them to the temple and join them in the purification ceremony, if you could just be a part of this Jewish ceremony, then maybe people will know that you're kosher, so to speak. Pay for that, too. Use some of that money in your chest that you're bringing to us to pay for everything and for their heads to be ritually shaved. Paul does it. Everyone's going to know the rumors are false if you do this. You yourself observe the Jewish laws. As for the Gentile believers, they should do what we already told them in a letter. So Paul does this ritual, by the way. He doesn't push back. It's fine to do, and it's for the sake of peace, and the best argument is usually the one that you don't have. And so Paul doesn't point out certain things here. And one of the things that he doesn't point out is that this letter that ages ago, maybe 2-3 years ago, the church in Jerusalem wrote when they were accepting Gentile Christians, what Paul doesn't point out is that nobody's really following the letter to the letter anymore. Here's what the letter said. They should abstain from eating food offered to idols. In the book of Romans and the book of 1 Corinthians, Paul's saying it's actually okay to eat the food that's offered to idols. Just don't do it around somebody who will get their dander up about it. So, like, don't eat food from idols around these guys. So he's actually not listening to the letter that they assume he is, but they assume he is, and they list these things in the letter that Paul, they believe, is still standing by. Some of them he is. Paul doesn't mention that either. He's not about that letter. Nobody follows it anymore. It doesn't say that. He's just like, yeah, that's fine. Goes to the temple the next day with the other men in the ritual. They'd already started the purification ritual. So Paul went to announce the date when their vows would end and sacrifices would be offered for each of them. So very visibly being a part of this, which is the plan to have the Jewish Christians accept him. And it looks like they do. There's going to be trouble here in a second, but it's not with the Jewish Christians. It's with a different religious sect. The 7 days were almost ended when some Jews from the province of Asia, so these aren't the Jews in Jerusalem that Paul's trying to placate with this ritual. These are Jews from Ephesus, where Paul was in jail, where he had all this trouble, and the place where he doesn't even want to go back. Remember a couple weeks ago, the Ephesian elders have to come to him because he doesn't want to go to Ephesus. Now somebody from Ephesus has spotted him in Jerusalem. It's the Feast of Pentecost. A whole bunch of Jews from all over the place have been there. They're like, that's Paul. That's the guy that broke up our synagogue. That's the guy who's teaching you don't have to circumcise. That's the guy. And they get ticked. They rouse a mob against him. They grab him, yelling, "Men of Israel." Now this is such an indication of narrow, nationalistic, ethnic-based religion, which is the kind that poisons things. Men of Israel, let's rally around patriotism here, guys. Help us. This is the man who preaches against our people everywhere and tells everybody to disobey the Jewish laws. When a religious person is talking about narrow nationalism and using hyperbole like everyone everywhere, you sort of know they're becoming that kind of religious person that you don't want to be. How's your vocabulary? Everyone everywhere? Those people? Us? Little indications that you might have a bit of a blind spot. He speaks against the temple and even defiles this holy place by bringing in Gentiles. On the temple, you are not allowed to go past a certain point if you're a Gentile. It actually says on the wall, if you are a Gentile and you go past this point, you have essentially killed yourselves, and we absolve ourselves of any responsibility of what will happen to you. You will most certainly die. Basically, if you go past that point, they're going to kill you, but it's not their fault. That's just what their religion dictates. Earlier that day, they'd seen Paul in the city with this Greek guy, Trophimus, from Ephesus, and they assumed Paul had taken him into the temple. Paul actually didn't, making it up. The whole city's rocked by these accusations, and a great riot followed. Paul was grabbed and dragged out of the temple. So there's a sort of religious person that in a place of asylum like the temple, a place of safety like a church, can seize that place as an opportunity for an attack. Grab him in the temple where he's supposed to be safe, a safe of asylum, and drag him outside the gates, close behind him, and then they start wailing on him. As they were trying to kill him, word reached the commander of the Roman regiment that all Jerusalem was in an uproar. He immediately called out his soldiers and officers and ran down among the crowd. You see in the picture, dragged out of the temple, giving it to Paul. The soldiers have to rush in, dust, screaming, that whole thing. When the mob saw the commander and the troops coming, they stopped beating Paul. Then the commander arrested him and ordered him bound with 2 chains. He asked the crowd who he was and what he'd done. Some shouted one thing and some another. Since he couldn't find out the truth in all the uproar and confusion, he ordered that Paul be taken to the fortress. As Paul reached the stairs, the mob grew so violent the soldiers had to lift him to their shoulders to protect him, and the crowd followed behind, shouting, "Kill him! Kill him!" Now we go, how on earth is that kind of behavior possible for people who profess to follow God? Because when you read the Old Testament and you read about widows and orphans and the outsider, how do you lose that and come to this place where somebody from the outside has tried to get inside? Kill him, kill him. Now, we look at that and we go, how on earth do they do that? Except some of us aren't letting our kids come to family gatherings because of who they've married or who they've dated. Some of us haven't talked to a sibling for a long time because they got more money when the family business or farm was split up, and we're bitter about it. And it wasn't fair. And God loves fairness. And if I'm going to teach them a lesson about who to date or about fairness, then I have to be pure and holy, and I got to show them the better way, and I hate to do it. Pious blind spots, couching evil in holy language, and it can sneak up on all of us. Here's a bit of an indication that Jesus knows that it can sneak up on us, because he gives us the antidote for it. Over and over, he gives us the antidote for stupid religion that hurts people. Here's what he says, and here's what you're going to have to hold dear to yourself so that you don't become this person that in your attempts to become holy, you hurt. Somebody asked Jesus, "Teacher, which is the most important commandment in the law of Moses?" So it's kind of a fitting question for all these people rioting that follow the law of Moses, trying to be faithful there. And somebody's asking Jesus, which is the most important stuff to follow? Jesus says, "You must love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, and all your mind." And everybody in the temple, in that riot we just read about, goes, "Yes, exactly." And that's why that guy shouldn't be here, because he contaminates everything. And that's why the Gentiles shouldn't be here. And that's why we're acting so vigorously to stay pure in our love for God. That by itself would be very dangerous. Because if it's just about loving God, then the way that that translates into earthly existence is a bit nebulous. Jesus knows that. He wants to save us from this destructive religion, so he doesn't just leave it at that. That's not the summary of the law. He also says a second is equally important. Not, first of all, God, and then if you have time, or if you really want to go a little farther, there's this other one. No, this other one is equally important. Love your neighbor as yourself. He's really clear. The entire law and all the demands of the prophets are based on these two commandments. Then in Matthew 7, he elaborates on that second one. Do to others whatever you would like them to do to you. This is the essence of all that is taught in the law and the prophets. This saves you from becoming the religious, hurtful person whose blind spots go bigger and bigger through the course of your life. Jesus saves you from it right here. Because every time you're ready to do something pious and holy, devout, extreme for God, Jesus says, would you like that to be done to you? I mean, it's so terrifyingly simple. You're about to fly an airplane into a skyscraper. And then you say to yourself, if I was working in that office building, would I want somebody to fly a plane into the skyscraper? If my wife was working there, would I want that? You're thinking about residential schools. And so you say to yourself, would I like it if somebody showed up on my lawn and took my kids by force and threatened me with jail or worse if I resisted? Would I like that? No! You would hate it. If my family situation was kind of embarrassing and struggling right now, would I want to be told that I couldn't be a part of a volunteer team in a church until I straightened that out? No, I wouldn't want to be told that. I'd want someone to reach out to me and to understand and to include me, to bring me a little bit closer. It's amazingly, frighteningly simple. And I say frighteningly because it pushes you to do things that are a bit scary. Very easy to love God in a vacuum. Think about social media. Would I like it if somebody tried to correct me with such pointed language and rigorous piety as I am doing to correct them? No, I'd hate it. I'd hate it. I'd feel demeaned and misunderstood and judged. But it's not like there's this separate line of loving God and loving people. Jesus, what he's doing here is he collapses them. There is no theoretical way to love God. There is only your love of other people that validates that you love God. They're not two different things. And just elaborate on kind of what can happen here. If you just love God, as we've been talking about, there's damage and violence because you just forget about the people and you're just trying to be pure and holy, and eventually you make God in your own image. He has your preferences and your likes, and there's fear gets in, and it's about control. History bears the truth of this. But if you just love your neighbor, then it's unsustainable and you get cynical. Because when you're trying to love somebody as you would want to be loved, they don't seem as appreciative as they should. They're not transforming the way they want to, and you can get pretty bitter pretty fast. You need the love of God and that connection with him to fill your heart so that it flows out into your love of people. This is why Jesus says, love God, love your neighbor as yourself. And then he says, everything is covered in that. All the law, every single purity law, every single ritual, all the elaborations in the prophets, the entire Old Testament. It's great that we have it. We need it for lots of things. But if we ever lost it, we could just remember, love the Lord your God with all your heart, love your neighbor as yourself, and then you can start in Matthew. Every base is covered, so it's terrifyingly simple. One of the questions that I think you can ask that helps you uncover a blind spot is this one. What do I like most about being a Christian? your honest answer might show a blind spot. If your answer is, I just love that we have the truth. I just love that I know how it's going to end, that I know what's going on, that I know who I am. I just love that we have the truth. Or I love that I'm secure, like I'm safe. I know where I'm going when I die. I just love that stuff. That's the best part of being a Christian. But Jesus says it's about loving God and loving other people, and you haven't even talked about that yet. So the Jesus answer about what's great about following him is that you are so filled with his love that you are uniquely poised and powered to love other people. That's the best thing about being a Christian. Is that, yeah, I have the truth. That means I never have to be defensive. Because when you have the kind of truth that sets you free, you don't have to be petty. You understand that Jesus is so magnificent and strong that he doesn't need to be defended in every way that you understand him. He can stand on his own 2 feet. As far as you and he are concerned, just let his power fill you so that you can love people. Isn't it great to be a Christian? You're uniquely powered to love people without ever getting cynical, without ever getting fatigued, because you love God. What do I like most about being Christian? Well, my security. I know where I'm, well, security is a good thing of it, but it's a security that needs to position you to love other people. I am so secure and cared for that I can be radically generous. I'm so secure, I don't have to worry about savings upon savings. I don't have to worry about my schedule or time because I'm secure. I'm held in my love for God. I am so secure, I can open my life sacrificially to other people. This is a very telling question about if you are the kind of religious person who is off-putting without realizing it. If what you like most is, though, I have the truth. And so that big scary world that's out of control, not to me, because I have the truth that lets me put it exactly where it should go. That's so silly and proud in the first place. Like, listen to yourself talk. No, what we like most about being Christians is because we have Jesus Christ in a relationship as the truth, not a bunch of doctrine. We have him in us. That means we get to have him coming out of us and loving people. That's the great part of being a Christian. You get to transform the world. Let's ask this question of the series. Are we there yet? Are we getting close to being those sorts of religious people that are compelling and magnetic as a church? Or maybe even of yourself, am I there? When you're asking the question, are we there yet? And when it's asked of you, sometimes there's clues that are obvious, yes? So you are driving to the mountains with your children, and you get to Brandon, and they say, are we there yet? You may sarcastically say, I don't know, do you see any mountains? Because you're nowhere near. The landscape hasn't changed at all. Now sometimes landscape changes drastically, but normally there's like a gradual flowing into a different kind of geography. The rural areas turn into cities. It's a silly question when you're up in an airplane somewhere. You're flying. Are we there yet? No, we're in an airplane. We're not there. But there are some signals that you're getting closer, right? So you land in the airport. So what I want to talk about here is, no, we're not there individually or as a church, but we're moving in the right direction. Here's some things I see on the landscape. Let me start personally. The intersection between loving God and loving people has for me been a hard one to navigate. I would way sooner love God with my mind. But I get caught sometimes reading these books about how to understand Jesus better. I'm reading this, it's probably the most dense, complex theological book I've read in 20 years, called Christ, the Heart of Creation. And it starts with an examination of how infinity relates to the finite, which I don't understand. So I go through book chapter 1, and then it's starting to come together, and I'm reading all about Christ, getting to know him better. Then the phone rings. Pick up the phone. Hi, Nathan, it's so-and-so from this social agency. Now, many of you know that Tamara and I were blessed to open our homes a couple years ago to two young men, and there's nothing in my story here that makes you think that that's a burden. That's been a tremendous joy for us. I don't think of them as people we've opened our home to. We think of them as sons. One of them graduated on this last week, and it was a beautiful event, similar to when my biological daughter graduated. So don't think I'm saying anything here, but there is some margin and stuff in your home that changes when it gets bigger. And the person on the phone was wondering if we would be willing to have another person come and live with us. And I'm sitting reading Christ, the heart of creation. And I'm thinking, we don't have a bed. It's our anniversary tomorrow, 21 years. All this like stuff. So you know what? Okay, I better pray about it. Tamara and I are talking, and there's some real factors. The person is not terribly trustworthy, so there could be accusations about me being a violent person or sexual impropriety that would really compromise a whole lot of things when rumors start coming around. So just there's lots to go on. We start to pray. I open my mouth and I say, Jesus, do you think we should do this? Jesus says, if you think this is something you have to pray about, you don't know the Father very well. I was telling Acacia, my daughter, this the next day, and she said, I love when Jesus talks to you that he's kind of sarcastic. He just likes to sort of, Now, as it turned out, the person in question didn't want to come live with us, but we did say yes, and it felt like we were doing something real Christian. So are we there yet in the Weselake home? No, but we're farther than we were. Do we know the Father better than we did? Yes. Because we understand you can't love him without loving those people. And you can't say, if I didn't have, I was going to say a warm place to stay, but in this week you want it to be cool. If I didn't have a cool place to stay or a bed to sleep in or somebody to care for me, would I want somebody to take me in? Do unto others as you would have them do to you. If you're not doing that, you're not loving God. Do you know the Father? Are we there yet? Are we there as a church? Yeah, we're getting there. A couple weeks ago, I shared the story of Donnie Smoke, a Dakota man who gave his life to Jesus, but what I didn't remember to say there and wanted to say was this beautiful narrative that came out of him giving his life to Jesus. Before he gave his life to Jesus, wanted to follow Jesus, he wasn't at all participating or even very interested in traditional Dakota spirituality. Now that he has chosen to follow Jesus, the strangest thing has happened in the last 10 years, and he'll be the first to make this connection, and I have his permission to tell the story. As Jesus moved in his life, he became more excited about being a Dakota man. He became very interested and embraced the traditional teachings. He dances powwow, smudges, hosts sweat lodges, pours the water on the rocks, and is hosting our pack elders as soon as COVID allows us to come. Are we there yet, pack, as a church that isn't a narrow, nationalistic, ethnically based Jesus and the white man place? Yeah, we're getting there, because he discovered who he is as an indigenous person holding Jesus' hand in this place. Are we there yet? Not yet. Are we getting there? Yeah. Last Are We There Yet story. This one's really poignant for me. Little guy comes to West Park School on the Long Plain bus. 8 years old. But the news has just broke in Kamloops, the sort of original news, the stuff that got the most visibility early on anyway, about the unmarked graves in Kamloops. So on his way to school that morning, kids on the bus, because the bus doesn't just come to West Park, it goes to other schools in Portage, kids on the bus are teasing him, terrifying him. You go to residential school, you're going to residential school, you're going to go to, you know this is a church school, you're going to a residential school. The little guy comes off the bus, understandably terrified. Comes in the front door over there, and Lydia can see or hears from the teacher that something is really wrong with the little guy. He's 8 years old. Now, you need to know, and what you might not know about Lydia from her sermons, is that nobody fights harder for the well-being of students than Lydia. I actually, when I was thinking about this, I was like, I can't think of a price she won't pay for these kids to be healthy and whole and loved here. So she comes to this little guy, and she gets down, and she gets down to his level, and she looks at him, and she starts to speak truth to him. But not the kind of truth that's a superior power truth, but the kind of truth that invites him in a comfortable way. And he says, okay, she says, let's talk about this. Let's sort this out. Oh, okay. Do you get to go home to your family tonight? I think so. Yeah, no, you do. You do get to go home to your family. Did anyone take you from your dad? No. And now what Lydia knows, but what that little guy doesn't know, is his dad has chosen to put him here because his dad had a horrible experience at school. Don't know that it was a residential school, but it was at school. And these are his words, wants a place where his son feels loved, valued, and safe. So Lydia speaks that to him. You know we love you, right? And we know that we love you as you are, and we love your culture, and we want to learn your language, and you can be everything that God made you to be, that Creator is calling you to be here. You're safe. Do you see how some of the older kids, they're dancing powwow? Do you see? And she starts to just feed into him the broadest, wide open arms version of Jesus that you could ever imagine or delight in. And the anxiety in this little guy, compounded by the struggles in this nation, dissolves. And he scampers off to class, happy that he is who he is, happy that he's loved and cared for. This, friends, is your religion at its best. Loving God and loving other people. Because if you were that scared little boy, wouldn't you want a Lydia in your life? Let's transition now to activation, understanding that what we're going to be talking about are our blind spots. And so that activation is probably even more important this morning than other places where it's super obvious where you're messed up. This one might take a little bit of finagling, but it's so important because, like G.B. Caird reminded us, perverted sincerity is pretty damaging. So Hannah and Teresa are waiting for you to walk into this, and I encourage you just to dive right in. Let's go to them now.
Good morning and welcome here. We are so excited to have you with us here this morning. And what a powerful morning. I've been writing notes and everything, and I'm going to try not to share it all with you because that might be overwhelming. It's overwhelming in my brain. But this is a great place where we get to actually put feet to what we just heard. We get to take it from within the walls of the church out into our community and flip our community upside down for God. And we're going to follow this format of light bulb, question mark, and arrow. And what we're going to start with is our light bulb, which makes sense. It's like our aha moment, like the light bulb went on. And I mean, there were so many this morning, but one of the things that I really love that Nathan talked about was about how God's love is compelling and magnetic. And I thought that was so cool because as we love God, we are compelled to go out and love others, and that magnetically draws them to Him. And I just thought that was a really cool moment. How about you, Hannah? What was yours?
That's so good. Absolutely. Mine was just taking me back to the basics. The saying that he said of do to others as you would have them do to you. I heard that so often growing up, and somewhere along the way I just got so focused on my relationship with God, which is great, but I think I haven't been intentionally loving people because I've just been so focused on God. But that is equally as important, and that whole equally important thing was just like, whoa, I don't think it has been equal in my mind, so I want to do that as we move forward in the week.
Absolutely. And and for me it would almost be the opposite. I was really good at loving people and then had to really get this up relationship with God. So that it's interesting how that is in our lives differently. Okay, so in the chat, we want you guys to pop in who is the kindest person that you know.
Yeah.
And what that means is not just kind as in, bringing you a chocolate bar, although we do really like chocolate, just saying, just if you need a hint. But more so, who are the people who have that compelling and that magnetic love for God and for people.
Yeah.
And so Hannah was sharing a really cool story about who it is in her life.
Yes, this one was really easy for me. I have lots of kind people, but God highlighted my mom to me. My mom is just such a wonderful person that displays the heart of the Father so well. I can actually tear up about this, but she not only loves people so kindly who love her, like our family and our friends, but she loves people who have hurt her so well, or people that have hurt our family. She just loves them in such a godly way that is just so inspiring to me, and has been such a wonderful mentor of how do we love all of God's people, not just specific ones, but everybody. And so she is just so kind to people, and she has a wonderful relationship with God. So that is who God highlighted to me.
That's pretty great. And I think it would be really hard to love those people who hurt your family, because I
Yeah.
think we all know that little bit of that mama bear
Yes.
that comes out when our
Yes.
family gets hurt.
Yeah.
And if we don't have our love of God, right,
Yeah.
like we're not going to be able to love them. It would
Yeah.
be really, really hard. It's kind of ties into where Nathan talked about if you don't love God but you just love people, you can become resentful.
Yes.
And so that definitely ties into that. And so as we move into this arrow, which is kind of our conviction time, so it's kind of like, what is God nudging you about? What we talked about was this idea that, I almost hate to say it, but have there been times in our lives where maybe have been those religious people where we didn't want to hurt people, but we did.
Yeah.
Right? Just
Absolutely.
by when we don't have, if we just love God, sometimes we can come across as superior or self-righteous, or Nathan used some other words that I can't read without my glasses, but anyway.
Yeah.
But
no.
we can come across that way, and so there can be times in our lives when that happens.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that would be a great conversation to have with our house churches, just to be able to have some support in those areas and discuss this in a deeper way. And definitely, if you feel like the Holy Spirit is leading you to go and have those hard conversations with somebody that you might have hurt, and just ask for forgiveness and let God lead you through that.
Yeah, absolutely. And as we were chatting a little bit, it's sometimes we think that it has to be a really big thing that God is calling us to do or move into. But we have to be faithful in the small things, because that kind of gives us practice and gets us ready for when the big things come. So in the chat, we want you to pop things in there, things that you're going to do this week. And maybe for you, you need to work on your love with God. And so what's that going to look like for you this week? Or if you're going to look at loving other people, what does that look like for you? And Hannah, you had kind of God prompt you in a really cool way with this.
Yes. Yeah. I felt like God was just saying, like, Hannah, you are a big vision kind of person. You love the big things. Like, I love birthdays and celebrations, and I love that kind of stuff. And I can love people well in those times. But he was saying, how can you love them intentionally? And he just highlighted the gifts that he has given me, which are joy and encouragement. And he says, you get to intentionally love people with that joy that I gave you and that encouragement every single day. And it doesn't have to be a big thing. Like, that's so simple to encourage people and to love them intentionally. So that is my goal for this week. It's just going to be trying to love people more intentionally as I go about the week. Yeah.
And I think that's so cool how God kind of reminded you of your gifts that he's given you so that you can use those to love other people well. So, and maybe that for you is just discovering what those are. Maybe that's even a part of what this week is going to look like for you. Now, because it is our side week, which is where it's so perfect. It's like they planned it this way because we're working on our relationships with each other. And so we're just going to pray this benediction over you for you to receive. And just pray with us, if you will. May we be filled to overflowing with the love of God. And as his true sons and daughters, be filled with his power to love, reconcile, and heal. May we bring together the things once torn apart and stand as family, side by side, united in his love. And now, sons and daughters, put feet to your faith this week. Put these things into practice, and let's love people so well that they are magnetically drawn to the Father through our way of loving them.
Absolutely. Yeah. Bless you
Thanks.
guys.
Have a good week.